I never meant to become a prophet. That much was clear as the second hand of the city's great clock ticked down to 0 and nothing happened. The sky didn't crack open, the earth didn't swallow us whole, and the seas didn't boil away. Instead, the city square was filled with a silence so dense it seemed to absorb the very breath of the anxious crowd. I was there, of course. Corbin, the city's humble jester, dressed in my usual patchwork colors: red, blue, green, and yellow, as garish as a carnival tent. My painted smile was a stark contrast to the faces around me, etched with worry, exhaustion, and a strange kind of hope that clung stubbornly to the edges of their spirits. I danced and joked, not out of joy but necessity, trying to coax laughter from a crowd that had forgotten how to laugh. "And here we are," I said, my voice rising above the murmurs, "one day shy of doom, and the only thing falling is the price of bread." The crowd chuckled nervously, a sound that felt more like a wheeze than a laugh. The apocalypse had been scheduled for today, or so the clocks said. For as long as anyone could remember, the city lived in the shadow of an inevitable end, one that never quite arrived. The countdown was a grim ritual, a daily reminder that the world was always a day away from collapse. I had made a career of poking fun at the absurdity of it all. My jokes were the city's reluctant medicine, a way to dull the edge of despair. But today, something different happened. As I cracked a particularly irreverent joke about the cosmic forces, if the universe's scheduler had a sense of humor, I'd be out of a job. The clock struck 0 and silence. For a moment, the crowd froze, eyes wide, breaths held, hearts pounding in unison with the ticking seconds that refused to end. Then, slowly, disbelief gave way to a cautious hope. The apocalypse was postponed. The city was stunned. News spread like wildfire, carried on the whispers of incredulous voices. "Did you see? The end didn't come! It's delayed!" What did Corbin do? Backstage, I sat alone, the painted smile wiped off, staring at the empty streets beyond the curtains. The weight of the moment pressed on me, heavy and unfamiliar. Had I really triggered this delay? Was it fate, coincidence, or something else entirely? Mayor Griggs, the man tasked with keeping order in this crumbling metropolis, watched the unfolding chaos from his office, his face a mask of cynicism and worry. He muttered about maintaining peace, but I could see the flicker of something else: hope, maybe, or fear. That night, as the city held its breath, I realized that my joke had started something far bigger than me. The apocalypse was no longer a certainty but a question. And in that question lay a strange, fragile hope. The days to come would test us all, but for now the world had laughed back. And so had I. I stood at the edge of the square once more, the city's eyes upon me, waiting. The jester had become a prophet not by design, but by accident. And the cosmic joke was just beginning, so I said to the empty air, "Let's see how long this punchline lasts." The city was a labyrinth of contradictions, where the ordinary and the absurd danced hand in hand beneath a sky perpetually tinged with twilight. Corbin moved through the streets like a flicker of color against the gray monotony, his patchwork clothes catching the eye of wary passers-by. The air was thick with a peculiar kind of expectancy, not quite dread, not quite relief, as if the city itself held its breath, waiting. He paused at a bustling market square where vendors hawked their wares with nervous energy. A woman clutched a scrap of paper, eyes darting to a battered radio perched precariously on a wooden crate. The crackling voice announced yet another delay in the apocalypse countdown, the news spreading like wildfire through the crowd. Murmurs of disbelief mingled with tentative cheers, some faces lit with hope, others shadowed by skepticism. Corbin wove among the throng, exchanging nods and half-smiles. His painted grin was both a mask and a beacon, a reminder that laughter might still have a place in this strange limbo. A child tugged at his sleeve, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination. "Will it really not end today?" she asked. He crouched to meet her gaze, voice low but steady. "Sometimes the universe likes a good joke, and it's still laughing." The child's uncertain smile was a small victory. Later, Corbin found himself drawn to the city's fringes, where shadows gathered in corners and whispers carried secrets. It was here he met Luna, her sharp eyes scanning him with a mixture of suspicion and reluctant admiration. She was a woman forged by the city's endless delays, pragmatic, battle-worn, fiercely loyal to the fragile peace she had fought to build beneath the surface. "Your jokes," she said bluntly, "they stir the pot. People cling to them like lifelines, but they could just as easily snap and drag us all under." Her voice was steady, but her glance betrayed a flicker of fear. Corbin smiled, though his heart beat a little faster. Isn't that the point? To make them laugh before the end. Not when the end feels like it might never come, and the waiting is the real torment. You have to be careful, Corbin. Hope is a fragile thing. Their conversation stretched into the muted light of early evening, the city's skyline a jagged silhouette against the fading sun. Corbin listened as Luna spoke of factions rising and falling, of the delicate truce holding the populace from tearing itself apart. She warned him that his growing notoriety made him a symbol and a target. Later that night, Corbin perched on a graffiti-covered wall overlooking the city. The lights twinkled like stars caught in the net of human hope and desperation. He pondered the absurdity of their existence, a city caught in an endless limbo, always one step from oblivion, yet stubbornly refusing to fall. Was his role as jester enough to tip the scales? Could laughter truly stave off the creeping shadow of fate? The air was cool, carrying the distant hum of life that refused to be extinguished. Somewhere below, a street vendor's voice crackled over a radio, spreading the latest news of the postponed apocalypse. The city held its breath once more, balanced precariously between fear and hope, and Corbin felt the weight of the day settle upon him. Tomorrow would come, just as it always did, and with it, another chance to laugh at the end of the world. The city square was alive with an uneasy energy, a fragile mix of anticipation and disbelief. Corbin stepped onto the makeshift stage, his colorful patchwork clothes catching the dying rays of the sun, his painted smile a defiant beacon amidst the crowd's wary faces. The air was thick with the scent of damp cobblestones, and the faint tang of smoke from nearby chimneys, reminders of a world that stubbornly refused to end. He began with a light jab at the endless delays, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed survivors, and any cosmic entities eavesdropping if the apocalypse is fashionably late. Does that make it the universe's way of keeping us on our toes? A ripple of laughter broke through the anxious murmurs, tentative at first, then growing into genuine amusement. For a moment, the oppressive weight of impending doom lifted, replaced by the simple joy of shared humor. Among the crowd, eyes gleamed with hope and skepticism alike. Children clutched their parents' hands, unsure whether to laugh or cry. Elders smiled wistfully, memories of past false alarms flickering in their gaze. The city, trapped forever on the edge of oblivion, found a flicker of light in Corbin's irreverence. But not all were comforted. Whispers spread like wildfire. Was Corbin a prophet, a charlatan, or worse, a blasphemer tempting fate? Some saw in his jokes a sign of rebellion, a spark that might ignite the long-awaited end. Others clung to the hope he stirred, believing that laughter was the only rebellion left against an unyielding cosmos. As the crowd dispersed, a figure approached from the shadows. Ezekiel, the eccentric philosopher with wild white hair and eyes that held the depth of countless lost nights. His robes fluttered in the cool evening breeze as he stopped before Corbin, a knowing smile curling beneath his tangled beard. "You jest, and yet," Ezekiel said softly, "you wield a power older than prophecy itself. The cosmic joke is not merely on us, it is us. The universe chuckles at our attempts to find meaning, to bend fate with laughter. But perhaps in this absurdity there lies a kind of hope no doom can extinguish." Corbin regarded the sage, the weight of his accidental role pressing down with newfound gravity. "So, you, re-saying my jokes might mean something, that they might actually matter." Ezekiel's eyes twinkled with a mix of amusement and sorrow. "Indeed. But beware, jester. The greater the joke, the louder the cosmic machinery may roar in protest. Later, as twilight deepened and the city's noises quieted, Corbin sat alone atop a crumbling wall, his painted smile now a fragile mask. The laughter he provoked had become a double-edged sword, a beacon attracting not only hope but also scrutiny and fear. The city's gaze was upon him, a reluctant prophet in a liminal world. He thought of the faces he'd seen, hopeful, fearful, desperate, and realized that his role was no longer just to entertain but to embody a strange, absurd rebellion. In a world poised endlessly on the brink of destruction, perhaps the smallest joke could echo as loudly as any prophecy. The stars blinked awake overhead, indifferent yet somehow conspiratorial, as Corbin whispered to the night, "If the world must end, let it be with a laugh." And somewhere, in the vast machinery of fate, a cog turned uncertainly, as if pondering the jester's challenge. But this was only the beginning. The city watched, waited, and somewhere deep in the cosmic shadows, the forces of order stirred, wary of the jester who dared to laugh at the end of the world. The night held its breath, and Corbin prepared to face whatever absurdities lay ahead. Armed with nothing but his wit, and a stubborn hope that laughter might yet change the fate of all. The city never truly sleeps, not in the conventional sense. Its pulse is a slow, measured tick, like the steady beat of a clock counting down to a moment that never quite arrives. Corbin had wandered its streets many times, but today was different. Today, the usual cacophony of anxious whispers and hurried footsteps seemed to carry a heavier weight, as if the city itself held its breath. Luna led the way, her short-cropped dark hair catching the pale light of flickering street lamps, her practical clothes blending into the shadows of the alleyways. "The clocksmith's workshop is just ahead," she muttered, voice low but firm. "If anyone knows about the machinery behind this endless delay, it's him." Corbin adjusted the colorful patchwork of his clothes, the painted smile on his face a mask he wore like armor. He was out of his element here, no stage, no audience, just the heavy silence of secrets waiting to be uncovered. "So, this clocksmith," he said, trying to inject some levity, "does he fix broken clocks or just broken timelines?" Luna shot him a sharp glance, but a flicker of a smile betrayed her amusement. "You will see soon enough." The workshop was a cluttered sanctuary of mechanical wonders and oddities. Walls were lined with countless clocks, some traditional, others bizarre contraptions with whirring gears and glowing runes. The air was thick with the scent of oil and metal, punctuated by the soft tick-tock of countless ticking devices. Amidst this chaos stood the clocksmith himself, a figure hunched over a table strewn with tiny gears and wires. His grease-streaked face illuminated by the ghostly glow of a half-finished device. Goggles perched atop his tousled mop of hair, he looked every bit the mad scientist, lost in obsession. "You must be Corbin," he said without looking up, voice a low rumble edged with exhaustion and fervor. "And you must be Luna. I've heard whispers." The jester who laughs in the face of the end. Corbin offered a tentative smile. Accidental prophet if the rumors are true. The clocksmith finally looked up, eyes wild yet focused. "This city runs on a delicate balance, a machinery of fate, if you will. The apocalypse isn't just a day on the calendar. It's a mechanism, a clockwork event set in motion by forces beyond understanding." Luna folded her arms, skepticism clear in her stance. "And you think you can fix this machinery?" "I don't just think it," he replied, voice dropping to a whisper. "I have to. Because if it breaks, the consequences won't be limited to this city. The entire timeline could unravel." Corbin's gaze drifted to the array of devices around him. Each clock seemed to pulse with a life of its own, syncing and slipping out of rhythm in a haunting dance. Unable to resist, Corbin let slip a joke, his voice light. "Sounds like your machines have a sense of humor too, always running late, just like me." For a moment, silence hung thick. Then, an eerie tremor rippled through the workshop. Clocks faltered, their steady ticking stuttering and skipping as if hiccuping in time. The air grew tense, charged with something unseen but palpably dangerous. The clocksmith's eyes narrowed. "Did you feel that?" Luna's sharp gaze locked onto Corbin, who felt a pang of unease beneath his painted smile. "Your joke," she said. "It did something." Corbin swallowed hard, the absurdity of the moment striking him anew. Here he was, a fool tossing jests in a room where every word seemed to tug at the strings of fate itself. "The machinery is sensitive," the clocksmith explained, voice grim. "Every ripple, every disruption could cascade into chaos." Luna stepped forward, voice firm but cautious. "We need to understand the stakes before we push this any further. The city depends on it." Corbin nodded, the weight of his accidental role settling heavier on his shoulders. "Then let's figure out how to keep the clocks ticking without breaking the joke." As they prepared to delve deeper into the mysteries of fate and machinery, the city outside seemed to hold its breath once more. Somewhere beyond the ticking walls, the apocalypse waited, postponed but never forgotten. And beneath the layers of absurdity and hope, the question lingered: how long could laughter really delay the inevitable? The night stretched on, heavy with whispered secrets and fragile alliances. And somewhere, in the tangled gears of time, a jester's joke echoed, threading its way through the machinery of destiny, daring to rewrite the end. The day had settled into its usual rhythm of anxious anticipation, the city's people wandering through streets lined with cracked cobblestones and flickering lamplights, their faces etched with the lingering dread of a doom always promised but never delivered. Corbin stood center stage in the bustling square, his colorful patchwork clothes as vibrant as ever, his painted smile wide and inviting, his bright eyes scanning the wary crowd. He was the jester, the accidental prophet, the spark of laughter in a world teetering on the edge of despair. As he launched into his routine, tossing jokes like confetti into the air, the crowd's mood shifted subtly. Some chuckled, others smiled weakly, but most remained watchful, waiting for the day to end in the familiar calamity that never came. Corbin's humor was his weapon against the suffocating dread, a challenge to the cosmic clock that ticked ominously in the shadows. Then, suddenly, the world seemed to hold its breath. A cold wind swept through the square, carrying an unnatural chill that snuffed out the laughter and dimmed the lanterns. The murmurs hushed to silence as a figure materialized from the haze, a tall, imposing silhouette shrouded in shifting shadows, with eyes that gleamed like ticking clocks. Relentless and unforgiving, the harbinger had arrived. The crowd instinctively recoiled, whispers of fear and awe spreading like wildfire. Corbin's painted smile faltered for a moment, but was quickly replaced by a mischievous grin. Well, he said, his voice ringing clear and defiant, "if it isn't the cosmic party pooper himself, come to remind us that the joke's over." The harbinger's voice was like the grinding of gears, cold and unyielding. "Corbin," he intoned, "your antics have delayed the inevitable, disrupted the balance of the cosmos. The apocalypse is not a joke, nor a game to be toyed with. The machinery of fate groans under this strain. The universe demands order." Corbin took a step forward, his eyes alight with irreverence. "Order? You call this endless limbo order? A city stuck one day before the end of the world? Sounds more like a punchline to me." The harbinger's shadowy form flickered with impatience. "Your humor is a dangerous contagion. It spreads hope where none should exist, undermining the schedule ordained by the Cosmic Council. The delay must end, the countdown reset. And if I refuse?" Corbin challenged, his voice steady despite the weight of the threat. "Then chaos will unravel the fabric of existence. Your defiance will be met with consequences beyond your understanding." Corbin's grin widened. "Consequences? I've lived in this city long enough to know that sometimes the best way to face the end is with a laugh. Maybe it's the universe that needs to learn that." A tense silence stretched between them, charged with the collision of cosmic inevitability and human irreverence. The harbinger's eyes clocked steadily, ticking down the moments, but Corbin's laughter broke through the gloom like a beacon, stubborn and bright. As the shadowy figure receded into the night, leaving behind a city caught between dread and defiance, Corbin knew this was only the beginning. The battle for the world's fate had shifted into a surreal dance of wit and will, and he was ready to play his part jester, prophet, and rebel against the ticking clock of doom. The night deepened, the city's heartbeat pulsing with uncertain hope. Somewhere in the distance, a clock chimed a reminder that the end was always near, but so was the laughter that defied it. And Corbin, with his painted smile and quick tongue, was the spark that refused to be extinguished. Yet as the dawn crept closer, the question lingered in the air like a whispered challenge. How long could one man's humor hold back the relentless march of fate? The game was set, the players in motion, and the city waited laughing nervously, hoping against hope that the joke would never end. The city was a powder keg, and the sparks were flying faster than anyone could catch. In the streets, the air thrummed with voices, some raised in worship, others in fury, and many trembling somewhere in between. Corbin, perched atop the battered wooden crate that served as his stage, felt the weight of every gaze, every whispered prayer, and every bitter curse. His painted smile, once effortless and bright, now felt like a mask too heavy to bear. It had begun innocuously enough that morning. The usual crowd gathered in the central square, their faces drawn and tired from nights spent waiting for an end that never came. But today, there was something different in the air, a crack in the fragile veneer of unity that had held them together. To one side, a cluster of fervent followers chanted Corbin's name, their voices rising in hope and desperation. Their eyes shone bright, clinging to every joke and every gesture as if it were a lifeline. Yet just beyond them, a sharp-edged group called for an end to the limbo. Their voices were harsh, their faces lined with bitterness. They demanded the apocalypse come at last, tired of the endless postponement that had become the city's cruel joke. Their shouts sliced through the murmurs like knives, sowing discord where once there had been uneasy peace. Corbin's gaze flicked between the two groups, the laughter in his chest caught in a chokehold of doubt. Was his humor really enough? Could it stave off the growing fear and anger? The jester in him wanted to toss out a quip, to ease the tension with absurdity, but the prophet in him hesitated. Each joke now carried weight, each smile a fragile shield against despair. Meanwhile, in the shadowed corridors beneath the city, Luna stood like a sentinel. The underground room was thick with smoke and the scent of damp stone, but her piercing gaze cut through the haze as she listened to the heated exchange among faction leaders. Their voices were rough with frustration, edged with desperation and fear. Luna's tone was steady, her words measured but firm. "We cannot tear each other apart," she said, pacing slowly. "The city is fragile enough without us turning on ourselves. We need a plan, not a brawl." Her pragmatism was a balm, but the tension lingered. She knew the factions were a powder keg, and she was the only one holding the matches back. Luna had once been part of the bureaucratic machine, a cog in the endless delays, but disillusionment had driven her underground. Now she was the city's unlikely guardian, trying to maintain order amid chaos. Above them, Corbin found a rare moment of solitude on a rooftop as twilight blurred its deep purples and oranges across the sky. The city below was restless, shadows lengthening and mingling with the flickering streetlights. He sat cross-legged, the patchwork of his clothes a riot of color against the darkening world. For the first time in days, the painted smile faltered. The loneliness of his role pressed down on him. Self-doubt crept in like a silent fog, threatening to smother the spark of hope he had so carefully nurtured. What if the laughter was just a fragile illusion? What if the cosmic machinery was already turning, and his jokes were but a brief distraction? He closed his eyes, letting the sounds of the city wash over him, the distant shouts, the murmurs of prayer, the quiet footsteps of those who still dared to hope. Somewhere deep inside, a stubborn ember glowed. The absurdity of their plight was undeniable, yet in that absurdity lay a strange, defiant beauty. At City Hall, Mayor Griggs sat behind a battered oak desk, the weight of leadership etched into his wary eyes and furrowed brow. The council chamber buzzed with unease as politicians and officials argued over how to handle the growing unrest. Griggs was caught between conflicting pressures, the desire to exploit Corbin's influence to maintain order, and the fear that the jester's rising cult might bring chaos instead. "We must walk a tightrope," Griggs murmured to himself, rubbing his temples. "One misstep, and it all falls apart." His voice, when he finally spoke to the council, was a blend of cynicism and resolve. "This city is fragile. Our people are fracturing. We need to balance hope with control, or risk losing both." Outside, the factions continued to clash. Corbin's followers held their ground, their chants a beacon of light in the encroaching gloom. Those who demanded the apocalypse's arrival grew more vocal, their anger feeding off the city's uncertainty. Luna's efforts to broker peace were tireless, but the fractures deepened. In an alley behind the square, Luna convened a secret meeting with faction leaders. Her voice was low but commanding. "We cannot let fear dictate our fate. The city needs unity, even if temporary. We fight the cosmic forces together or we fall divided." Some nodded, others scowled, but beneath the surface, a fragile accord began to form. It was a shaky truce, held together by Luna's unyielding pragmatism and the faint hope that Corbin's laughter was more than just noise against the coming storm. Back on the rooftop, Corbin wiped the sweat from his brow as a cold wind stirred the loose threads of his patchwork clothes. The city's endless limbo was a cruel joke, a cosmic prank with no punchline. Yet, in the faces of his followers, in Luna's steady gaze, in the cautious hope of Mayor Griggs, he saw something worth fighting for. He took a deep breath, the night air crisp and biting. The painted smile returned, a little more genuine this time. "Let them come," he whispered to the darkness. "I'll keep laughing." But laughter alone might not be enough. The fractures in the city were widening, and the next days would test not just Corbin's wit, but the very survival of hope itself. As the chapter closed, the city held its breath, balanced precariously between despair and defiance, awaiting the next move in a game whose rules were written by fate, but played with the wild cards of human spirit and cosmic absurdity. The night wrapped around the city like a velvet shroud, pressing close and thick with the scent of damp stone and distant rain. Beneath the flickering, uneven glow of a faulty street lamp, Ezekiel sat cross-legged on the cracked cobblestones, his wild white hair a chaotic halo that caught the feeble light. His eyes twinkled with a strange, restless energy as he looked up at Corbin, who perched awkwardly on a broken bench. His patchwork clothes a riot of muted colors in the gloom. "You see," Ezekiel began, voice low and deliberate, "the joke isn't just the joke. It's the echo, the ripple it sends through the cosmic pond. Fate, destiny, the apocalypse, they real machinery, cold, precise, relentless. But humor is a wrench thrown into the gears." Corbin blinked, the painted smile on his face feeling heavier tonight. "So, you re-saying my jokes, they matter. More than just a moment's laughter." "Exactly," Ezekiel replied, a slow smile breaking through his weathered face. "They rebellion. Each laugh is a spark, against inevitability, against despair." They sat in silence, the city's muted hum pressing in from all sides. Somewhere above, a clock chimed soft, off-beat, as if unsure of its own timing. "But isn't it all pointless?" Corbin asked, staring at the cracked pavement. "The end keeps coming closer, even if it delays." Ezekiel shook his head with a gentle chuckle. But that's the cosmic joke, isn't it? The end never quite arrives. It's stuck in limbo just like us, and that's why laughter is so vital. It's not the absence of fear, but its companion, the defiant grin in the face of the void. Over the next few hours, Ezekiel unraveled stories of cosmic absurdity, of bureaucratic deities trapped in their own regulations, of timelines bending and twisting like the spirals of a poorly tuned clock. Corbin listened, absorbing each word like a sponge, the weight of his accidental prophecy settling deeper into his bones. They moved together to an abandoned cafe, its windows grimy and cracked. Inside, the air was thick with dust and memories. As they sipped bitter, scalding tea from chipped cups, The distant murmur of anxious city voices drifted through the broken glass. "People need hope," Corbin murmured, "but maybe my jokes aren't just hope. Maybe they're a kind of truth, a way to look the inevitable in the eye and wink." Ezekiel nodded, eyes gleaming. A wink can be more powerful than a shout. Outside, the city held its breath, caught in the fragile pause between dread and anticipation. Corbin stepped out into the silent street, the painted smile on his face catching the dim light. Without thinking, he let out a laugh, sharp, sudden, and utterly human. The sound echoed down the empty avenues, bouncing off crumbling walls, weaving through shadows. It was a laugh that said, "Not yet. Not like this." It was a laugh that said, "We are still here." Hours later, perched atop a crumbling statue of some forgotten hero, Corbin gazed out at the city. The first light of dawn crept over the horizon, pale and uncertain. The apocalypse, once expected like a storm, had failed to arrive yet again. His painted smile felt less like a mask and more like a banner, a symbol, a declaration. He was no longer just a jester telling jokes for coin. He was a prophet of absurdity, a rebel against the cold machinery of fate. And tomorrow he would laugh again. Because sometimes the greatest act of hope is simply to refuse to be broken by the end. The city stirred below, caught in its endless limbo, but within Corbin burned a new fire, one sparked by laughter, fed by absurdity, and fueled by a hope that no apocalypse could silence.